Emma adjusted the thin strap of her satin dress, staring at her reflection in the hallway mirror. The girl looking back almost felt like a stranger. 17, pale but glowing. Her hair curled into soft waves, and for once, she looked untouched by the constant weight of Caroline's rules. Tonight was supposed to be hers. Prom night. A night to forget the years of silence, the endless criticism, and the way her stepmother's presence filled every corner of the house like smoke. Caroline appeared behind her in the mirror, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line before breaking into a smile that seemed too rehearsed. "You look lovely, Emma," she said softly. Her voice carried warmth, but her eyes did not. They lingered too long, sharp, calculating, as if Emma's happiness was something she needed to measure. Emma forced a smile in return. "Thanks." The word came out flat, automatic. Caroline reached forward, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." The sentence should have comforted, but instead it felt like a warning, an invocation, of someone gone, someone Caroline could never replace. Emma turned away quickly, grabbing her small clutch. "Ryan's waiting outside," she said, almost to herself, eager to escape the tension that always wrapped around them. Caroline's hand rested briefly on her arm, gentle but firm. "Be careful tonight. Boys can be reckless." Emma nodded, without answering. She slipped free, her heels clicking against the wooden floor as she walked toward the door. From the porch, Ryan's car headlights cut through the dusk. His voice called out with cheerful ease, "Emma, you look incredible!" He stood by the car, bouquet in hand, completely oblivious to the storm behind her. Emma turned back once more. Caroline was still at the doorway, watching. That smile had returned, stretched wider, as if pinned in place. It was not pride. It was possession. Narration slowed as Emma stepped outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of lilacs blooming along the yard. She took Ryan's arm, grateful for the relief of his warmth and the simplicity of his grin. But even as they laughed and slid into the car, she felt Caroline's gaze pressing against her back like a brand. The drive to the school was filled with the kind of light chatter teenagers cling to. Music hummed low, Ryan tapping the steering wheel in rhythm, his excitement infectious. Emma tried to match his energy, tried to sink into the promise of a perfect night, but her mind replayed Caroline's eyes. "She's not coming, right?" Ryan asked, half joking. Emma gave a nervous laugh. "God, no. She never leaves the house." Ryan smirked. "Good. Tonight's about you and me. Forget her. Forget her. Easy words, impossible task." Emma nodded anyway, forcing herself to believe. Him. Back at the house, Caroline remained in the doorway long after the car disappeared. Her hands, neatly clasped in front of her, trembled ever so slightly. Inside the silence of the home, her smile collapsed. The warmth drained from her features, leaving only cold calculation. She whispered into the empty air. She thinks she is free. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back, hollow and watchful. Emma, unaware of the words spoken behind her, leaned her head against Ryan's shoulder as they pulled up to the school. The gymnasium lights glowed like a beacon. Laughter and music spilling into the night. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope. But as she stepped into the glittering crowd, a chill passed over her. A feeling she could not shake. The kind of unease that whispers before the storm, and somewhere in the distance, her phone buzzed. Caroline's name lit up the screen. The gymnasium was transformed, shimmering with strings of white lights, and 1,000 balloons clustered against the rafters. Music pulsed through the air, a rhythm that seemed to drown out the world beyond those walls. For a brief moment, Emma let herself believe she belonged here. Laughing, swaying to the beat, surrounded by friends who saw her not as Caroline's stepdaughter, but simply as Emma. Ryan spun her playfully across the floor, his tie loosened, his grin wide. "See?" he said over the music. "This is what you needed. A night away from her." Emma smiled, though the mention of Caroline made her chest tighten. Maybe you're right. The crowd was electric. Shouts, laughter, the stomp of shoes against polished floors. For once, Emma's laughter blended with theirs. Ryan dipped, her low, and she let out a startled shriek before bursting into laughter. It was fleeting, but it was real. The night wore on. Teachers drifted at the edges of the crowd like watchful shadows, while couples snuck outside for whispered secrets. Emma stayed close to Ryan, clutching at his sleeve whenever she felt her mind begin to drift back home. He leaned close, brushing her hair back. "Promise me you'll remember tonight. No matter what comes after, this night is ours." Emma's heart tightened, though she did not know why. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe nights like this could last. Near midnight, the music softened, shifting into a slow ballad. Students paired off instinctively. Ryan offered his hand with exaggerated formality. "May I have this dance?" Emma laughed and placed her hand in his. They swayed together beneath the glow of fairy lights. For the first time in months, she allowed her body to relax against his chest, her eyes drifting closed as the music carried them. And then the phone buzzed. Emma stiffened. She pulled back slightly, digging into her clutch. The glowing screen burned against her vision. "Caroline," Ryan frowned. "Don't answer, it's just her." Emma hesitated, but the vibration felt like a command she could not ignore. With trembling fingers, she pressed the screen and lifted the phone to her ear. Caroline's voice slid through the line, soft and deliberate. "Having fun?" Emma's throat tightened. "Yes, we're dancing." "That's nice," Caroline replied. The way she said it was not approval. It was possession, as though she were reminding Emma that her joy was only borrowed. "Remember what I said before you left? Boys can be reckless." Emma swallowed. "Ryan's not like that." A pause stretched across the line, suffocating. Then Caroline whispered, "Just make sure you come home. I will be waiting." The call ended before Emma could reply. She lowered the phone slowly, her hands trembling. Ryan touched her arm. "What did she say?" Emma forced a shaky laugh. "Nothing, just the usual." But her eyes betrayed her, and Ryan saw the fear lingering there. "Emma, you don't have to live like this. One day you'll get out." Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to cling to the warmth of his certainty. So she tucked her phone away, forced a smile, and pressed her head back against his shoulder. They finished the dance, swaying in rhythm, but Emma no longer felt safe. Each lyric, each flicker of light seemed fragile, as if it might collapse at any moment. By the time the final song ended, students poured toward the exits, laughing, calling out goodbyes. Emma and Ryan stepped into the cool night air. The stars stretched endless above them, but Emma's gaze lingered on the shadows between street lamps. Ryan squeezed her hand. "Don't let her ruin this. Tonight was perfect." Emma nodded, but her phone weighed heavy in her clutch, a silent reminder that perfection never lasted. She slipped into the car beside Ryan, her dress rustling like a warning. Back at the house, the porch light glowed faintly in the distance, and behind the window, a silhouette waited. The drive back was quiet. Ryan hummed softly along with the radio, but Emma barely heard him. Caroline's words from the call looped in her head, low and suffocating. "I will be waiting." The car turned onto her street, the familiar line of houses dark except for one. Hers. The porch light glowed faintly, too faintly, as though it had been left on not for welcome, but for warning. Ryan parked at the curb and squeezed her hand. "I'll walk you up." Emma shook her head quickly. "No, it's late. My stepmother doesn't like visitors." Ryan frowned. "She'll have to deal with it. You're not walking in alone." They crossed the yard together. Emma's heels clicked against the stone path, each step heavier with dread. When she reached the porch, her heart stopped. The front door was not shut. It stood slightly ajar, the brass knob glinting under the porch light. Emma froze. "Ryan, the door." He stepped ahead of her, pushing it wider. A sharp crack sounded under his shoe. He bent down, and in the sliver of light from the hall lamp, Emma saw it too. Shards of broken glass scattered across the wooden floor. Ryan whispered, "Someone's been here." Emma's breath caught. The air inside the house was heavy, unnaturally, still, as if waiting. Her clutch trembled in her hand. "Stay behind me," Ryan said firmly. He nudged the door open farther. The living room looked undisturbed at first glance, every cushion neatly in place, every picture frame aligned. Yet the details told another story. A window pane cracked jaggedly inward, glass glittering on the rug, a vase on the mantel tilted at an odd angle, not shattered, not broken, just moved. Emma stepped inside cautiously, her chest tight. "Caroline?" Sound echoed from the kitchen. A faint shuffle, then silence. Ryan turned sharply toward it, fists clenched at his sides. "Who's there?" The kitchen door creaked and Caroline emerged, her silk robe tied loosely, hair slightly disheveled. Her eyes darted between Emma and Ryan before settling on the broken window. "Oh, thank God you're home," she breathed, pressing a hand dramatically to her chest. "Someone tried to break in." Emma's stomach twisted. "What? Are you hurt?" Caroline shook her head quickly. No. I heard the crash, came downstairs, and they were gone. Just gone." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Did you call the police?" Caroline hesitated. "It happened so fast. I was frightened. I thought maybe I should wait until Emma came home. I did not want to be alone when I explained it." Her words were smooth, measured, yet something about them rang false. Emma scanned the room again, the glass swept neatly into a corner, the rug strangely free of footprints. Everything looked too orderly for a break-in. Emma's voice was small. "It doesn't look like anything's missing." Caroline's eyes flicked toward her, sharp for a split second before softening again. "Perhaps they were interrupted. We should be grateful," Ryan muttered under his breath. "Doesn't make sense." Caroline ignored him, reaching out to stroke Emma's cheek. "You must be exhausted, darling. Go to bed. I will handle this." Emma flinched at the touch, nodding faintly. Her body obeyed, but her mind screamed. Something about the scene was wrong. The glass, the careful arrangement of objects, the calmness in Caroline's voice, it all felt staged. Ryan lingered by the door. "I'll stay until the cops come." Caroline's smile was thin, forced. "That won't be necessary, truly. We do not want to disturb the neighbors." Ryan shot Emma a look. She read the message in his eyes. "This isn't right." Emma whispered, "I'll call you tomorrow." Reluctantly, he left. The moment the door shut, silence settled again. Caroline stood at the foot of the stairs, her shadow stretching long against the wall. "Go upstairs, Emma," she said softly. Emma obeyed, but as she climbed, she could feel her stepmother's eyes drilling into her back. The air carried not relief, but anticipation, like a stage carefully set for the next act, and in the middle of the night, the scream would come. The house was too quiet. Emma lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak of wood and sigh of wind sharpening her nerves. Her dress still hung over the chair, sequins catching faint moonlight. But the joy she had carried home from prom had evaporated the moment she saw the broken glass. Sleep tugged at her, heavy and restless. Each time her eyes closed, she saw Caroline standing at the bottom of the stairs, her face painted in false concern. She saw the window pane, the shards arranged almost neatly, as if displayed. It was wrong. All of it. At some point, exhaustion claimed her. Then came the scream. It ripped through the night like a blade, high-pitched and raw, echoing up the staircase. Emma bolted upright, heart hammering. For a moment, disoriented, she wondered if it was a dream. But then the sound came again, this time a strangled cry, abruptly cut short. Emma tore from her bed, bare feet slapping against the floorboards. She flew down the hallway, nearly stumbling on the steps as she rushed toward the source of the noise. The living room light was on. Too bright, too sudden. And then she saw it. Ryan. His body sprawled across the rug, his shirt soaked in dark red, blood spreading into the fibers beneath him. His eyes, wide and unblinking, stared at nothing. Emma screamed, the sound bursting from her chest before collapsing into sobs. She fell to her knees beside him, clutching at his arm, shaking him violently as if she could drag him back. No. No, no, Ryan, wake up! The blood was warm against her hands. Too warm. Too real. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Caroline stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth, the other gripping the doorframe as if for balance. "Oh, my God," Caroline whispered. "He's dead." Emma's head whipped toward her, tears streaking her face. "What happened?" Caroline's chest heaved. "An intruder. I saw someone. They were here, in the house. I came down, and then I heard—" She gestured helplessly toward Ryan's body. "He must have— Oh, God!" Emma staggered to her feet, voice breaking. "You saw them? Who?" Caroline shook her head frantically, her robe slipping off one shoulder. "I do not know. I just saw a shadow. They ran out the back." Emma's breathing came in short, jagged bursts. She stared at the broken window again, the glass swept aside earlier. Had someone truly returned? Or had it never been an intruder? At all? She stumbled toward the phone on the end table, her bloody fingers fumbling at the buttons. "I'm calling the police," she said, voice trembling. Caroline reached for her. "Emma, wait!" "Don't touch me," Emma snapped, recoiling. Her entire body shook as she punched the numbers, pressing the receiver to her ear. Her words came in gasps. "Please, help me! My boyfriend, he's been murdered!" Caroline hovered behind her, her breathing steadying in a way that made Emma's skin crawl. Within minutes, flashing lights washed over the windows. The wail of sirens cut through the silence, and officers stormed inside, voices sharp, commanding. Emma backed away as they examined Ryan's body, her hands trembling, sticky with blood she could not wipe away. One officer guided her toward the sofa. "Stay seated, miss. We'll handle this." Emma collapsed into the cushions, her gaze locked on Ryan's still face across the room. Her sobs came in waves, her chest burning. Caroline perched stiffly in the armchair, her composure oddly intact. She recounted the same story she had told Emma, that she heard a noise, came downstairs, saw a shadow, and then Ryan was dead. Her voice carried just the right balance of fear and sorrow. But Emma felt the truth clawing inside her. The timing, the neatness, the way Caroline stood there watching, it did not feel like shock. It felt like performance. An officer crouched before Emma. "We'll need your statement soon. I'm sorry for your loss." Emma nodded numbly, words trapped in her throat. Her world had cracked open, every piece of safety torn away, and as the officers marked the floor with evidence tags, she realized nothing would ever be the same again. Caroline sat in silence, her eyes fixed on Emma, as if daring her to speak. The detective's questions echoed in Emma's ears long after he left the house. Every corner seemed to hold an invisible weight, pressing down on her chest. Caroline moved about calmly downstairs, speaking to the officers as if she were a hostess entertaining guests rather than a grieving widow. That unsettling composure gnawed at Emma. Unable to sleep, she wandered upstairs. The house creaked with age, every step reminding her of the night's horrors. Her eyes drifted toward the narrow door at the end of the hallway, the attic entrance. She had not been up there in years. Something inside her insisted she go now, though she could not say why. The pull grew stronger with each hesitant step up the wooden ladder. Dust and the smell of forgotten years met her as she pushed open the door. The moonlight streamed through a small, cracked window, illuminating boxes stacked like tombstones of the past. She began searching through them almost without thought, hands trembling, as if guided by a force she could not name. It was in a box labeled with Ryan's initials, RDH, that she found it. A small, leather-bound notebook, edges worn, as though it had been opened and closed countless times. Emma sank onto the wooden floorboards, brushing away dust before flipping it open. The first pages were filled with sketches, half-finished. Designs of houses, little doodles of guitars and old cars. But as she turned further, the tone shifted. Ryan's neat handwriting grew uneven, scattered, almost frantic. Caroline watched us again today. Her stare lingered longer than usual. Jealous? Or something darker? Emma froze. Her breath caught as she traced the words with her fingertip. Ryan had noticed Caroline's behavior too. Another entry read, "Dinner turned cold tonight. Caroline snapped when I asked about Emma's classes. Said I should not encourage her distractions. It was not anger, it was possession." Emma felt her heart thudding against her ribs. These were not passing remarks. They were warnings. Ryan had seen something building, a storm no one else had dared name. The entries continued. "She stood outside our door last night, whispered something I could not catch. But I felt it. Resentment. Sharp and dangerous. Emma must never hear it." Emma's throat tightened. She had heard whispers at night, half dismissing them as dreams. But Ryan had recorded them, confirming her darkest suspicions. One page was scribbled so violently that the pen had nearly torn through the paper. "If something happens to me, it will not be an accident." Tears blurred Emma's vision. She pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from crying out. Ryan had known. He had feared this, and he had left behind breadcrumbs for her to follow. The attic seemed to grow colder. She heard the faint murmur of voices below, Caroline speaking with the officers, calm, measured, in control. Emma clutched the notebook tightly, her only shield against the tide of lies that threatened to consume the truth. She read one last entry before closing the book. "There is something Emma does not know. Caroline's past. Her story does not match the records. I will find proof." Emma's pulse quickened. Proof. That was what she needed now. Proof that Caroline's story was not what she claimed. Proof that Ryan's death was not the work of an intruder, but something far more sinister. Downstairs, the front door closed. The officers were leaving. Soon, it would be just her and Caroline in the house again. Emma tucked the journal under her arm, her mind racing. The floorboards creaked. Behind her. For one breathless moment, she feared Caroline had followed her into the attic. But when she turned, the space was empty. Still, the sensation of being watched lingered, heavy and unshakable. Emma descended the ladder, clutching the journal as if it were her lifeline. With every step, a new resolve formed within her. Ryan's words would not be ignored. She would uncover the truth no matter the cost, and Caroline, calm, composed Caroline, would not see it coming. Emma sat cross-legged, On her bed, Ryan's journal still open in front of her. The yellowed pages had given her pieces of a puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. His words hinted at fear, at distrust, at something darker beneath Caroline's polished smile. The detective's questions still echoed in her mind, pressing against the fog of grief. And yet, it was not just Ryan's notes that haunted her now. It was the past, Caroline's past, that Emma had long tried to ignore. The first memory returned like a shard of broken glass. Emma was 13 when she overheard an argument between Caroline and a man she barely knew, her ex-husband, Daniel. Caroline's voice had been shrill, rising through the walls of the house. Emma remembered crouching at the top of the stairs, heart pounding. "You think you can leave me and take everything?" Caroline had screamed. "You think I will let you humiliate me?" The man's reply was muffled, but Emma could hear enough. Accusations of betrayal, of Caroline being unfaithful, of secrets she carried even within her marriage. That night ended with the slam of a door and Caroline's sobs muffled into a pillow. Daniel never returned, and Caroline spoke of him only with venom, painting herself the victim of a selfish man. But Emma even then had sensed there was more. Rumors had swirled in town. Emma's late mother's friends whispered in hushed tones, their glances darting away whenever Caroline entered the church or grocery store. Words like affair, scandal, jealousy lingered like smoke. Emma had once asked Ryan about them, but he had only shaken his head, telling her not to repeat gossip. Now, flipping through his journal again, Emma saw it differently. The sharp lines he used when describing Caroline's sudden rages. The way he wrote, "She watches you like a hawk," or her, "Anger burns too quickly." Emma closed the journal, pressing her palm against the worn leather cover. The weight of Caroline's past pressed heavier now, like shadows stretching backward through time. Another flashback surged, this one colder, darker. Caroline standing over the kitchen sink, staring at Emma with that strange mix of pity and disdain. "Your mother was never strong," she had said softly, as though confiding a secret. "She wanted too much from life. She thought love was enough. Look where it got her." Emma had been too young then to challenge those words, but now they rang with cruelty. Was that resentment rooted in jealousy? Did Caroline hate her mother? For the love she once had with Emma's father, a love Caroline had never managed to hold on to. The threads tangled tighter in Emma's mind. Caroline's failed marriage, her bitterness toward Emma's mother, her obsessive control of Ryan. And now, Ryan's death, explained away with a lie about an intruder. It was too much coincidence. Too many shadows circling the same flame. Emma rose from the bed and crossed to the window. Outside, the garden lay, still beneath the moonlight, but she could almost feel Caroline's presence, calculating, watching. The calmness Caroline displayed when the police arrived was no longer a mystery. It was rehearsed. It was the mask of someone who had practiced deception for years. Emma whispered into the quiet, "What have you done?" The words tasted bitter on her tongue. For the first time, she felt the enormity of the danger pressing in around her. If Ryan had been trying to warn her in his journal, then he had seen something long before she had. Perhaps Caroline's betrayal stretched further back than Emma dared to imagine, beyond marriage, beyond family, into something twisted at the core of who she was. The past was no longer past. It was alive, bleeding into the present, threatening to consume everything Emma thought she knew. As Emma turned from the window, her gaze caught the journal again. A single phrase Ryan had underlined leapt out at her. "She will destroy what she cannot control." Emma shivered, clutching the book tighter, and for the first time she realized Caroline's story was not just about jealousy or rage. It was about survival. Caroline's survival at any cost. Emma knew then the next answers would not come from memory alone. She would have to dig deeper into the places Caroline had tried to bury. The attic held more than just dust and forgotten relics. Somewhere in that house lay the truth, and Emma was no longer afraid to find it. The house seemed heavier that evening, as though the walls themselves carried the burden of all the secrets Emma had unearthed. From Ryan's cryptic journal entries to the flashbacks of Caroline's twisted past, each revelation pressed down on her chest until it was hard to breathe. She could not hold the silence any longer. The truth, whatever shape it might take, needed to be confronted. Caroline was in the kitchen, her back turned, methodically chopping vegetables as if the very act of routine could keep chaos at bay. The rhythm of the knife against the cutting board was sharp, mechanical, unnerving. Emma stood in the doorway, her hands clenched at her sides, her voice trembling but firm. "Stop pretending," Emma said, her words slicing through the room. "I know you hated Ryan. I know you hated me too. I read his notes. I saw how you watched us." The knife paused midair. Caroline's shoulders stiffened, but she did not turn. For a long moment, there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the hollow echo of Emma's accusation hanging in the air. Finally, Caroline set the knife down with a deliberate calm and faced her stepdaughter. Her expression was composed, but her eyes betrayed a storm barely contained. "You think you understand?" Caroline whispered, her voice trembling just enough to betray her facade. "But you have no idea what it feels like to be erased, to be treated like a shadow in your own home." Emma's heart pounded. "You erased yourself, Caroline. You pushed everyone away with your control, your obsession. Ryan was afraid of you. He wrote it down. The outbursts, the threats. He warned me about you without saying it directly." Caroline's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Afraid of me? Ryan was never afraid. He pitied me, the way your mother pitied me too. She had everything, his loyalty, his tenderness, the life I could never hold together. And then she left you behind. And somehow, you became her replacement. A perfect little reminder of everything I lost." Emma froze. The venom in Caroline's words dripped with years of resentment. "So that is what this is about. My mother." "This is about everything," Caroline snapped, her composure cracking. "About a husband who walked away from me for someone better. About a life I could not control slipping through my fingers. And then you, with your innocent eyes and your whispers with Ryan, you threatened what little I had left." Emma's voice shook, but she pressed forward. "So you decided Ryan had to go?" The kitchen seemed to shrink around them. Caroline's eyes flashed with a dangerous mix of fury and pain. She stepped closer, her breath shallow, her hands trembling, though. She tried to steady them. "You do not understand what it is like to be replaced in every way," she said, her voice low and unsteady. "Ryan was slipping from me. He laughed with you, confided in you, looked at you with a softness he never gave me. I could not watch it anymore. I would not." Emma's stomach churned. The confession hung between them like poison in the air. "You are admitting it," she whispered. "You are saying Ryan had to die because you were afraid of being alone." Caroline's face crumpled for a fleeting second, revealing the broken woman beneath the rage. But then, just as quickly she straightened, her features hardening once more. "Ryan had to go," she said coldly. "He left me no choice." Emma's body trembled. The words echoed, filling every corner of her mind. She wanted to scream, to run, to call Detective Hale immediately, but she could not move. Caroline's eyes locked on hers, a mixture of triumph and despair twisting her expression. "You cannot prove it," Caroline added, almost tauntingly. "No one will believe the grieving stepmother could do such a thing. You are just a girl lost in grief, desperate to blame someone." Emma backed away slowly, her pulse racing. She realized then that Caroline was no longer simply her stepmother. She was a woman teetering on the edge of madness, capable of anything. And Emma, alone in the house with her, had just pushed her past her breaking point. The sound of a car door slamming outside jolted them both. Detective Hale had returned, his shadow crossing the window as he approached the door. Caroline's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing in panic. Emma swallowed hard, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It is over, Caroline. He will know the truth." Caroline's lips parted, her breath sharp and ragged, as though the walls she had built around her darkest secrets were collapsing all at once. But whether she would crumble or lash out, Emma did not yet know. The front door creaked open, and the house held its breath. The trial began under the gray skies of late November, as though the world itself understood the weight of the proceedings. The courthouse loomed with austere stone walls, its cold pillars rising like silent judges. Reporters crowded the steps, their cameras flashing as Caroline was escorted inside, her wrists bound but her head held unnaturally high. To the public eye, she appeared the picture of resilience, a grieving widow wrongfully accused. Yet Emma, standing at the back of the crowd, knew better. She had seen the cracks beneath that polished exterior, had heard the chilling confession echoing in the darkened hallway of their home. Ryan had to go. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Caroline's attorney, a smooth-voiced man in a tailored suit named Richard Hale, presented her as the victim of a cruel misunderstanding. A woman who had already suffered the loss of her husband now stands falsely accused, he declared in his opening statement, his tone deliberate, calculated. He painted Caroline as a devoted stepmother, struggling to bridge the gap with a wary stepdaughter who misunderstood her intentions. Emma listened, her stomach twisting. Every carefully chosen word felt like a dagger against the truth. She had braced herself for this performance, but it still shook her to see Caroline portrayed as noble, fragile, and wronged. The prosecution, however, was armed with Ryan's journal. Pages of his handwriting, marked with unease and cryptic warnings, became the foundation of their case. "These are not the words of a man who felt safe in his own home," the prosecutor, Ms. Benton, told the jury. "They are the words of someone who sensed betrayal growing closer every day." Caroline's mask barely shifted, though Emma noticed the subtle twitch in her jaw whenever the journal was mentioned. It was as though Ryan's voice reached from beyond the grave, cutting. Through her carefully crafted lies, witnesses were called. Neighbors recalled arguments muffled by thin walls, Ryan's raised voice, Caroline's cold replies. One spoke hesitantly of seeing Caroline in the garden late at night, burying something near the hedges. A friend of Emma's mother testified about Caroline's bitterness, her offhand remarks that Emma's mother never deserved Ryan. Each testimony tightened the noose, yet Caroline's defense countered with the same refrain. Grief can twist behavior, suspicion can cloud memory. When Emma took the stand, the room seemed to still. Her palms trembled as she placed them on the wood, her voice catching at first. She spoke of the jealous glares, the sudden outbursts, the suffocating control Caroline tried to exert over every aspect of their lives. And then, with the courage she did not know she had, Emma repeated Caroline's confession. "She told me Ryan had to go." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The defense leapt to its feet, objecting, claiming Emma had fabricated the words out of resentment. But the damage was done. The jury had heard. Emma's words lingered in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Caroline's composure faltered at last. Her eyes narrowed, lips tightening into something between a smile and a sneer. For a fleeting moment, her mask slipped, and Emma glimpsed the woman she truly was. The venom behind the charm, the hatred buried beneath civility. Still, Hale fought to redirect the narrative. He emphasized Emma's youth, her grief, her imagination, influenced by sorrow. He suggested Ryan's journal was nothing more than a man's paranoia during a difficult marriage. He urged the jury to see Caroline not as a murderer, but as a widow already punished by loss. Days bled into nights as the trial unfolded. The jury remained silent, their expressions unreadable, while the public outside divided into two camps: those who believed Caroline an innocent woman destroyed by circumstance, and those who whispered that her grief was nothing more than an elaborate act. Emma sat through every minute, her heart heavy but resolute. She could not let Ryan's memory be buried beneath Caroline's lies. She clung to the thought that truth had a voice, even if it quavered. When the final arguments ended, silence filled the courtroom. The judge's gavel echoed like a drumbeat. "The jury will deliberate." Emma's breath caught. Everything balanced on this moment, the shadows of lies against the fragile light of truth. The jury filed out, their faces solemn, carrying with them the weight of a family torn apart, a life stolen, and a web of betrayal waiting to be unraveled. The world held its breath, and Emma, seated alone on the wooden bench, whispered to herself, "Please, let them see her for what she really is." The courtroom was silent, holding its breath as the judge's words echoed like a final verdict, not just on Caroline, but on the lives she had fractured. "Guilty on all counts." The gavel struck, sharp and unforgiving, sealing Caroline's fate. Gasps rippled through the gallery, but Emma barely heard them. Her body trembled, her fingers locked together in her lap. She had waited for this moment, prayed for it even, yet when it finally arrived, the weight was crushing. Caroline's face, pale and composed, betrayed no tears. Only a faint, sardonic smile flickered across her lips, as if the conviction were not defeat but a twisted triumph, proof that she had at least forced Emma to stand in the shadows of her darkness. Even in shackles, Caroline remained defiant, her eyes boring into Emma's until guards pulled her away. For Emma, the trial's end did not feel like justice. It felt like the opening of an abyss. She had spoken the truth, endured the whispers of strangers, the cross-examination that sliced into her grief like knives. She had watched as her stepmother's lies were dismantled piece by piece, but what lingered was not victory. It was loss. In the days that followed, Emma walked through her house like a ghost. Each room carried echoes of betrayal. The kitchen, where Caroline used to hum while preparing breakfast. The hallway, where Ryan once whispered promises of a future. The living room, where her mother's laughter had lived before Caroline's shadow replaced it. Now silence hung heavy, oppressive, and endless. She thought about Ryan often. His smile, his warmth, the way he had been her anchor when the storm of grief first threatened to swallow her. Caroline had taken that away, not just his life, but Emma's faith in love itself. The obsession that drove Caroline to murder had left Emma terrified of intimacy, afraid that trust was nothing but a weapon waiting to be turned against her. Late at night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, haunted by questions that could never be answered. Did Caroline ever love her father? Did she ever truly see Emma as anything more than a rival? Or had every gesture, every forced smile been a mask covering envy and hate? The betrayal was not just in the murder, it was in the years of deception, the years Emma had longed for a mother and instead been given a wolf in disguise. Friends and neighbors offered sympathy, but their words felt hollow. At least justice was served, they would say. But what was justice? A prison sentence did not resurrect Ryan. It did not erase the scars of manipulation or the nightmares of a woman who had lurked so close, waiting to destroy. Justice was a word spoken in courts, but in Emma's heart, it was grief that ruled. One evening, Emma found herself standing at her mother's grave, the autumn wind curling around her coat. She traced the letters on the headstone, whispering an apology. I should have seen her sooner. I should have known. Yet even as the guilt pressed heavy, she realized something vital. Caroline's darkness had not come from Emma's failures. It had come from Caroline's own fractured soul, her inability to love without destroying. The cost of truth had been steep. Emma had lost her stepmother, her fiancé, her sense of safety, and the fragile innocence of believing family meant protection. But truth, however painful, had also freed her from the illusion. No more shadows, no more pretending. She knew now that love was not guaranteed, that trust must be earned carefully, painfully, and never given blindly. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma made a quiet vow. She would not let Caroline's legacy define her. She would live, not in spite of the betrayal, but because of it. To choose joy after devastation, that would be her rebellion against the poison Caroline had spread. Still, as she walked away from the graveyard, she could not shake the feeling that shadows would always follow her. That even behind bars, Caroline's influence would linger like smoke, reminding her that some truths, once uncovered, never truly let you go. And as Emma disappeared into the twilight, the story was not one of triumph, but of survival, because the cost of truth was everything, and yet it was the only thing that could set her free.